everyone, I'm Alex Schmeeken, one of the artist residents at the Iowa Ceramic Center and Glass Studio, and today I'm making a video for you all about how to throw and trim small snack bowls. So to start, I'm just using 1 pound of the reclaimed clay at the studio, and just start with coating up and down a couple times. I always like to do that just a little bit, just to get everything nice and kind of wedged together. Oh, sorry, my shoulder's in the way there. And I'm kind of making the cake pretty flat because this is going to be a wide, flat piece. So you always want to make the cake kind of corresponding to whatever you're making. So if you're doing a vase, you'd be doing something tall and narrow. And for opening, lately I've been liking to use a sponge, and I basically just press it in and drag it towards myself like you just saw, and then just kind of compressing that rim down. And you can always put your left hand on the outside to help make sure you're not pulling out too much. And then I also just like to use a sponge on the outside in order to not have super prominent throwing rings. And so here you can see that I'm actually throwing straight up first, and then I focus on expanding. And this is a pretty common theme with throwing a lot of different things. I even do with mugs. I always throw them a little bit narrower than I think they will be, because it's always much easier to go wider than it is to go narrower. So that's kind of my rule of thumb, especially if it's a big piece, but these are just little guys. And then since I'm making a bunch, I want them to be consistent, so I always measure, and I use centimeters instead of inches because it's just easier for my brain to use the metric system. And you want to think about what kind of profile you want to have, if you want something kind of vertical or something more like open and flat and wide. And these are kind of a little bit more like upright bowls. And then I always like to just smooth everything out and refine that shape using my wooden rib. You can also use a metal rib, or if you have some mud tools, rubber ribs, those are really good too. And then I just get a nice sharp wooden tool and just trim just a little bit away from the bottom. I don't want to trim away too much because I want to kind of have a little bit of a prominent foot ring on the bottom. So I don't want to trim in too far because I also don't want it to be tippy or anything like that. But yeah, so that's just how I do a little bowl. It really doesn't take me very long. It just takes practice to throw with a little bit more consistency. And alright, so then here I'm going to do some 3 times speed, and I'm going to show you guys a couple more, and then we'll move on to trimming. Alright, so now we're going to do some trimming, and these I wired off when they were a soft leather hard, let them firm up a little bit, and now they're a lot more firm, so they're not going to squish around or anything like that. And then I'm just kind of feeling how thick they are on the bottom. I tend to throw these relatively thin, so I'm not going to be taking off too much clay, but I'm just going to be refining that shape and adding a nice coil foot ring and everything like that. So yeah, so here I'm just centering. I like to just trim straight on the wheel head because you can use the rings on the wheel head to help you just center everything. And then I just kind of also use my finger to lightly trace along and feel when things are not centered. And then I'm just using some nice soft clay to hold my bowl where it should be. Eventually I might get one of those sticky bats or something like that, would be nice. But for now we're just doing the good old-fashioned coils. And then again, notice how I am always just smoothing straight down into the wheel. You'll probably have seen this in a couple of my other videos, but this is how I keep from warping my bowls or mugs or whatever I'm doing. I'm just squishing the clay straight down into the wheel head instead of squishing into the piece itself. And then I always start by trimming the outer edge of the bowl just to get that roughness off, because, you know, no matter how much you cleaned it off, it's always going to be a little rough. And then I'm going kind of right below that to kind of emphasize this little ring of clay. And I'm kind of trying to keep in mind what kind of shape I want, how I want to continue the curve of the profile of the piece that's already there, while also kind of lightening it up and taking off some of the extra clay. So then now I kind of move to the inside, and you'll notice I kind of do this in sort of a rough way, and I have all these, like this whole spiral situation, but that's kind of how I do it to help level it off. It's easier if you don't have as much surface area of your tool in contact with the piece that's bumping it around. So I find it helpful just to use just like the little corner of the rectangle side and just kind of make like a little spiral like that a couple times, holding your tool really steady and braced, and then go in with the flat side like I'm doing now. And that'll help you get things a little bit more even. And then you can also see how I'm kind of rounding off the foot, and I'll probably end up taking a little bit more clay off, but we're pretty much almost done. But I'm just kind of rounding it off. I don't want the foot ring to be a little too chunky, so I try to kind of keep in mind what kind of aesthetic I'm going for. I'm going for something kind of light, simple, not too crazy. I might do some surface design on these, but I'm also kind of thinking I might just do some kind of more solid colored glazes and just kind of let the form speak for themselves a little bit more. And it's nice not to do surface design on almost everything I make, because that can get kind of exhausting, and kind of mentally it can kind of burn you out. So it's nice to mix it up and just do some simple kind of production type stuff now and then. And you want to be careful, of course, not to trim too much. You can kind of start to feel a little bit of give in the center as you get close to it being pretty thin. So sometimes I'll kind of tap the center and see how that's feeling. Or I'll know, you know, I really didn't throw the bottom very thick, so I'm not going to take off too much. So then here I'm going in with the big loop tool, and I am just kind of smoothing it out, getting rid of any trimming lines that I had, getting all the boogers off, and then, yeah, I'm just kind of refining things. And that's pretty much it. I also kind of like to have it be kind of like a nice curved bottom, because it's kind of mirroring the shape that you threw on the inside. And that's kind of how you can get a really nice light piece, is kind of matching the inside with the outside. And then I just use one of those little ball-tipped tools to get a nice little signature. I used to use a stamp, but I found that it would kind of deform my pieces sometimes, so I like to just handwrite it every time. Keeps it interesting. Alright. And you gotta be really gentle when you flip it over, just to make sure you're not squishing in too much. And there we go. That's what we have. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching how to throw and trim some small bowls. I ended up making about 20 of these, so yeah, I got kind of excited about it. But feel free to check out my Instagram for other images of stuff I make, and I'll probably post this finished product eventually once I get to fire everything.